Hi there, and welcome to this short video that provides an insight into ensuring that you are redundancy ready. My name is Michael Osborne, Director of Sage Business Group, and with me for this video, we have our Senior Accountant, Jenny Kemp, and Sage Wealth Management Financial Advisor, Pablo Villela. Welcome, Jenny and Pablo.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
We know that often the redundancy can cause concerns, both financially and also for the family, and create uncertainty in decision making. So it's a time though that when sound decision making is more critical than ever. But this session is designed to help guide you through one of the potentially most challenging times in your life. So, of course, nothing we do in this world at the moment goes without a disclaimer. So we do have a disclaimer that this is general advice only, and please ensure that you obtain advice specific for your needs, as every situation is different and will have its own nuances. So what we're going to cover today is what is a redundancy. We're then going to touch on, and because it's not actually as simple as it may sound, and we're going to touch on who qualifies for a redundancy payment, and then ultimately, what are the tax implications that come with being made redundant and receiving a bona fide redundancy payment. So let's get stuck into it, and we'll go with what is a redundancy first. So Pablo, I'll start with you if I may, please. Would you mind running us through what a redundancy is, and when a genuine redundancy takes place, this action, when this happens, it triggers potentials for tax and financial planning opportunities.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so just when redundancies happen, so it's really the unfortunately, it can be the introduction of some new technology. Businesses have some slowdown in profits or lower sales or production. Companies end up ceasing operation and closing completely. Big one at the moment are the two is relocating, so whether they relocate interstate or overseas, and the restructure of a business due to merger. So sometimes two businesses come together as one, and they don't need to have multiple positions of the same one. And clearly, the elephant in the room is the current COVID environment, where industries have been decimated and know that the length of recovery is quite long, so they need to make decisions on everybody so they can sort of move on in that sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I've also read, Pablo, that not everyone does qualify for a redundancy payment, do they? So who doesn't get redundancy payments?
Yeah, so not everybody does qualify, so it is a bit unfortunate, but if you've been attached to your employer for less than 12 months, then you will not get a redundancy. Casual employees aren't entitled to one either. Trainees, so if you're in a role and started there in a trainee position, you're not entitled to it, because once that trainee agreement finishes, then you just cease your employment. Apprentices don't. But the big one is the small businesses. So if a small business employs less than 15 people, they don't actually have to offer redundancies to their staff, which is quite unfortunate.
Yes, that's right. So we just got to be, if someone's expecting a redundancy, they might just have to check in case that maybe they're not entitled to one. So thank you, Pablo. Now, Jenny, assuming someone does get and qualifies for redundancy payment, but one of the major tax implications of a genuine redundancy payment is that there's a potential that a significant amount of that may be tax-free. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Michael. There's two components of a redundancy, known as the base amount and the annual service amount. In the 1920 financial year, the base amount was $10,638, and the annual service amount is based on the number of completed years of employment. Keyword being completed. If you could have worked 360 days of the year and you still don't qualify for that full year. So of completed employment. And for the 1920 financial year, that was $5,320 per year of service. So for an example, someone who's worked 15 years of completed service with an employer would be entitled to approximately $90,438. That would be $10,638 of the base amount plus $5,320 multiplied by 15 years of service. So this is based on the 1920 financial year figures. Obviously, every year the figures do change a little bit. But of course, this doesn't mean that the redundancy will be this much, because obviously it's based on the amount of service you've done. So, but it does demonstrate the possibility of a significant amount and a tax opportunity for many people.
Absolutely. As you rightly point out, that the redundancy may not be this much, but what about in cases where possibly the tax-free redundancy payment, or the redundancy payment is more than that tax-free amount? What happens then, Jenny?
Well, sorry, excuse me. Yes, so it's not all tax-free, and of course, we refer to the amount of these as ETPs, or eligible termination payments. This is where there are a number of variations that kick in, such as tax rate capping and planning opportunities. There are also elements to consider, such as the annual leave payouts, long service leave payouts. Each of these attract different amounts of tax, levels of tax, depending on, once again, many variables. And we find it really valuable to work with clients in determining the tax-free treatment, or the tax treatment, specific to your termination payment and tax treatment of redundancies. Then, of course, we'll work with the financial planning team to identify wealth creation and tax planning opportunities.
Yes, that's right. And it really just goes back to what I said before about our general disclaimer about this. Each situation is so different, and to get advice specific to yourself is really important. So thank you, Jenny. Now, Pablo, someone gets made redundant, and maybe their first thought is, well, do I just head down to Centrelink immediately? What do you suggest in those situations?
Well, yes, you can, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you actually qualify to receive anything. So it is a bit of a tricky one. We've got a couple of things on there on the slide. The job seeker payments, there is a time frame before you actually qualify for that, which is called an income maintenance period. And there's like a calculation of, depending how much you receive, it depends on when you actually start receiving the job seeker payment. And clearly there, the JobKeeper payment will cease. Obviously, you're not employed there, so you can't actually continue to receive that particular payment if that's what you were on previously. I know that legislation might have it and be extended, but that's irrelevant for yourself because you're no longer gainfully employed at that particular place. But again, it's about receiving the right tailored solution, because there are things that you can do now to not necessarily accelerate when you receive Centrelink, more so when you start to qualify, you receive the maximum payment possible during that period.
Okay. Definitely. And Pablo, I personally know that you've worked with many of our clients over the years through these times and in situations similar to this. Do you have some quick tips to help people through this time? Can you run through these if you've got any?
Yeah. So look, we want to put a bit of a spin on it, that what you're feeling is quite normal, and to remain positive. It's normal to feel sad, annoyed, and confused in it. Receiving a redundancy is a very stressful and confusing time in anyone's life, and receiving the right advice is quite crucial at this stage. I'm currently going through it now with my wife. She works in the airline industry, and there's the possibility of receiving something, not receiving something when you're going back to work. So that's why it is a quite stressful time. So having that can provide some peace of mind and take some of the worries away. We've been able to help many clients over the years, providing tailored advice to provide that best possible outcome. And also, if you know of anyone that is impacted by redundancy or a possible redundancy and would benefit from speaking to someone like myself and the rest of the accounting team, happy for you to please pass on my details, and then we can see where we can assist in any way. And the most important factor for most people after receiving a redundancy is determining how cash flow will be managed and maintained. That's the real key here. Some of the common areas to supplement this cash flow is obviously from your own reserves, Do you have an ability to access some of your super fund? Can I redraw my mortgage? And there's some of the questions that we've been asked a lot.
Yeah. Absolutely, and we've got on screen now some common questions that we've been doing this for quite some time, and unfortunately we've been through redundancies and things before. So the benefit of that to us is that we can pass on some of the questions that have been asked before. So Pablo, would you mind giving us a quick insight into some of these questions about a little bit how that people can maybe how they can contact Sage Wealth Management or a financial advisor to help them through this time?
Yeah, so that's part of it is we do have obviously a lot of questions about what you can do or what you shouldn't do. The main ones are, should I pay off the mortgage? How do I reduce my tax? I mean, we're beneficial that we're in a new financial year, so we've got a lot of time to actually plan for this. And the whole question of should I retire now and can I retire now are the main two. And just working out and sitting down and having a tailored solution that we can work through. The two big questions also is what happens with your super fund. So can you still use that respective fund that you've got that's linked to an employer? And now what happens to it also if you're in a defined benefit? But the biggest question we always get is cash flow. How do I continue to have my particular lifestyle, and where's that cash going to come from?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And what can we do to what can we offer as Sage Wealth Management?
Yeah, so really we charge no upfront fees for any initial consultations or discussions. So firstly, I'd just like to sit down. Well, we're not going to sit down in a room together for a while, but at least have a conversation over the phone or through Zoom. And just discuss what your options are and what you can do, and we don't charge for that. If advice comes from it, then obviously we'll disclose what we can do from there. But it's mainly sitting down and working out a good solution for yourself, making sure the calculations are right and that you're receiving it, and then from there get the accounting team and a planning team to financially get you ahead.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, that about wraps it up. So thank you, Pablo, and thank you, Jenny, and really appreciate you taking us through the redundancy and some of the topics that are going to be on people's minds right now. And if they're on your mind right now, please reach out to us and we'll help you through that. This is not the time to try and take this on alone. We're here to help, and you can see that we want to be able to help you. So allow us to join this particular part of your journey with you. We're only a phone call or an email away, and we could make a very big difference. So thank you for listening, and thank you again to Pablo and Jenny, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.